The urge to topple Egypt's former dictator, Hosni Mubarak, that was the key driving force of the 2011 revolution. But after being sentenced to life in prison for ordering the killing of hundreds of protesters in the uprising and a successful retrial appeal that followed, Mubarak could actually be freed from jail later today. He will, however, be back in court within just a few days for further proceedings. RT's Beltrue explains how his release has even become possible.
Essentially, the clock has been turned right back to 2011 before he started any of these trials, so it's almost like he'd never been sentenced in the first place. So because he's already been in detention for several years, they now can't keep him in there before he's actually sentenced. Now, he has been in jail, obviously, because there have been other charges against him, newer charges in regards to corruption. Now that he's been acquitted of those, there's no reason to keep him in jail. However, we still have 48 hours left for the prosecutor to basically appeal the decision to release him. If they decide that he shouldn't be released, then he will remain in jail, and we'll see, how long they'll keep him as the retrial goes forward. The reaction on the streets has been largely mixed. People here are kind of reeling from the situation in the last few days. It's been basically one of the bloodiest weeks in Egyptian modern history, in the fighting between Morsi supporters and security forces. So they're certainly bewildered by that. The fact that Hosni Mubarak could be freed at the same time is almost too much for some revolutionaries here who, speaking to me, have told me that what was the point of coming out of the streets 2 years ago? What has been the point of fighting for justice, freedom and bread in the last 2.5 years if the very person they started fighting against is to be walking free? We will see what happens as his trial is to restart again on the 25th of August, at the same time as many other leading Muslim Brotherhood figures will also stand trial. So it's somewhat ironic that these two figures are basically going to be facing trial at the same time. But largely on the streets, people are pretty upset that this much-hated figure could be seen to be walking home.
I know we spoke to Cairo-based award-winning journalist Etar El-Katatni. She says the situation in Egypt has become so bad that the rather surprising news on Mubarak's possible release has actually been pushed to the sidelines.
You have the democratically elected president in jail, Al-Baradei, there's a case against him, and Mubarak's going to be released. It's a kind of everything's been flipped over. The news of his possible release was just a kind of cherry on top for everyone. So much has happened, so many people have died, that Mubarak has faded into the background a little for a lot of people. When you think that was being tried for, which is the death of the protesters in 18 days, and then you compare the fact that a greater number of protesters died in one day last week, it kind of puts things in perspective for a lot of Egyptians.